Okay, it is 2 o'clock. Hopefully people will continue to join us. Erica, are you happy to continue to let people in as they...
Yes, don't worry about that.
Perfect. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a conversation about vermicomposting, which kicks off this year's International Compost Awareness Week. My name is Marcela, and today I'll be helping with timekeeping and to moderate the discussion. But really, you're here because we have some amazing experts in this field. We're very fortunate to have 4 inspiring and impressive speakers. In fact, we have 5 because Imraan has invited one of his students and colleagues, and you will hear from them shortly. Just to give you a sense of what we're doing today, we will have 2 presenters and 2 respondents. The presentations will take 30 minutes altogether, and each respondent will have 5 minutes each. This is an event hosted by the Cape Town Together Food Growers Initiative. And as you will see towards the end of today's conversation, we are also working with the Organics Recycling Association of South Africa, or RASA for short, to continue the conversation in the course of the week. Erica will tell us a little bit about those upcoming workshops. The Food Growers Initiative is a collective of people who want to grow food. It originated during the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, to connect the entire Cape Town. And today's conversation is an invitation not only to learn, but also to take action. Erica, who's in this call, can answer questions about the collective. So if you do have any questions about the Food Growers Initiative, please put them in the chat box. In order to make the best of our time, and as we've done in previous sessions, I am not going to do formal introductions. Instead, what I want to do is post the kind of a short bio for each speaker in the chat box, and I will let them introduce themselves. What I do want to do now is just show you quickly who our speakers are. I'm going to skip the definition of vermicomposting because they're going to do a much better job explaining what they are. But we have Imraan Samuels, co-founder of Guerilla House, and Nomonde Buthelezi. Nomonde is unfortunately unable to join us at the second, but she's going to join us a little bit later. And then we have 2 respondents, and I will also, as I said, welcome them to introduce themselves when the time comes. So with that, Imraan, over to you. I'm going to stop sharing so that you can take it away.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so thank you for having me. I'm Imraan from Guerilla House. I've been doing worm farming since 2014. It was one of the first things that I got into when I got into permaculture, because it's literally one of the easiest things to do. Yeah, first let's just see what is worm farm. Actually, let me flip my screen around. Okay, so this is one of the worm farms that I want to demo. It was my very first one that I got in 2014. Let's see if we can find some. I just added some fresh material today. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so this is a red wiggler. It's not your earthworm that you find in the soil. It's not from South Africa. It's apparently, as far as I understand, native to Europe. But as far as I understand, they're not invasive. And they feed at the top layers of the soil. They feed on relatively fresh organic matter. So why I like them is because they are low maintenance, they require little input, and they do all the work for you compared to composting. Let me flip this back down. So with composting, there's obviously a lot of input, a lot of maintenance from humans, but here we partnered in with microorganisms to do the work for us, and we do get a higher quality fertilizer out of this system. Just look at my notes here. Yeah. So yeah, what do you need to do worm farming? So the basic thing that you need is a container. Yeah, you can use anything like a bucket. And I'm sure Nomonde is going to show one as well. We've got Fawaaz is going to show a different setup as well. But you need a container to hold the contents. It needs to be aerated, so oxygen needs to get in here. And it needs to drain the liquid out the bottom. Um, Worms are about 70 to 95% moisture, so they do require a lot of water. So on average in summer, like I'm watering this every day, just a little bit of water. And they require organic matter. And yeah, that's about it. Oh, they also don't like light. They are photophobic. So they need darkness, which is why the black container. And they can be, the system is actually quite odorless if you manage it correctly. So when it comes to the organic matter, a pattern principle that we like to use is a carbon versus a nitrogen ratio. So basically, your nitrogen is things like your kitchen scraps, your organic matter, like your cuttings, your waste leaves, those kind of things. And they are typically higher in nitrogen. So nitrogen is what's responsible for odors and that kind of thing. Whereas carbon balances it out and actually captures any odors. So all you got to do if you want to keep this odorless, like I've seen people actually keep this inside their house, you just got to have enough carbon material. And so sources of carbon are things like sawdust, and even more accessible is newspaper. So here we've got some newspaper soaking, because I'm going to show you guys how to make a very simple worm farm. And yeah, how you start it, you literally just need a couple of these worms. I'm working with one hand here, so just bear with me. Let's see if I can fix this up. Yes, here we've got some more in there. There we go. Okay, so a handful of worms. Some shredded newspaper. This is high carbon. They like it as bedding as well. Okay. And I like to also add a little bit of organic matter. Here we've got a mix of horse manure and sawdust. Okay. And you don't want to add too much in the beginning because I'm only adding a handful of worms there. So you don't want to add too much. It's going to add some moisture, some of this liquid. And they will literally double the population in about 60 days. And each worm will eat their body weight every single day. So they're quite prolific. They go like crazy. And yeah, they're super simple. I'll show you guys another one. Like you can use anything. I've seen people use ice cream containers. I've seen people use tires. I've seen people use pipes, like down pipes directly in the garden. So here's just a pot planted. So if you don't have much space or you want to just try it out, okay, I just added this fresh material today, so they notch it in this layer. Let me get from this one. So there'll be some worms in here, but there'll also be lots of eggs. Yeah, and that's it. So what you gotta make sure though, if you wanna manage this correctly, is you gotta have a top layer of carbon. Okay, so like that, just over them. Let's put some over here. Sorry, I'm working with one hand here. Yeah. Okay, so what this top layer of carbon is going to do, like I said, it's going to keep the odors in so that you don't have flies or anything attracted to it. And it's also going to keep it nice and dark for them. And literally like within 1 to 2 months, they will start to chow through this newspaper. And that's when you know you can start to add more organic matter. Let me just switch the camera back to me. Okay, so how much time do I have? I've got a minute left there. What to feed them. So I literally feed them everything and anything, but there's some things that they don't like, or they'll kind of avoid, or you'll see them going towards other food waste that they prefer. So things that are quite acidic, like citrus peels, tomatoes, onions, they kind of stay away from it, but I have seen them break it down. So it's just a matter of balancing like how much of that you put in your system. Also lots of fatty foods. Though they actually do break down the fats, but too much in your system is going to be detrimental. What else? They don't like very salty environments. So if you are using a worm farm for like a grey water system to process kitchen waste, make sure you limit the amount of dish soap that goes into the system, because that's going to raise the pH of the water or of the environment too high, and it will actually kill them. But yeah, they can break down fats and animal products. So while they can break it down, so like meat, chicken, that kind of thing, they can definitely break it down. That does tend to attract other pests like rodents and those kind of things. So you just want to manage what you put inside there. And safe bet is just lots of carbon material and your kitchen scraps. Yeah, cool. I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Imraan. That was fantastic. And I am sure that people have lots of questions. So before we hand it over to your colleague, I would like to invite everybody to post your questions in the chat box, and we'll make sure that we get to them before the end of the session. So yeah, over back to you, Imraan, because I'm not sure exactly how you guys are coordinating this part of the presentation.
Okay, is Fawaaz in? Is he in the call?
Hello, I'm in. Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay,
Hello, everyone. So my name is Fawaaz, and I feel very privileged to be on Zoom. It's actually my very, very first time. Also representing the class. That is what I'm busy with doing now as well. Imraan, just sharing a little bit of knowledge with Imraan. He was my facilitator at the association called Seed. So I feel very, very privileged to be on board. And also thank you for Erika of Food Growers to making this possible as well. So I've got the worm farm here. And this one is basically an old bath that I've got. And this is practically how it looks. So all my organic matter, potato peels, green matters in here, as you can see. I've got some worms also here, some grass. So this is how it looks here for me. That's my worms. That's how it looks. And this I've been doing for the past year now. So all the kitchen scraps goes into my worm farm, and that is where I also get my worm castings and also my worm tea out of. So that's my setup there. So yeah, thank you.
sorry, Fawaaz, you want to share about that you process in the dog feces as well?
Yes, definitely. I'm just walking towards that side, and it's here right at the back. I'm just making my way. So I also do have another worm farm, and my dog manure goes into this one. The reason why I'm keeping it separate, because also dogs do eat meat, and in meat we get a lot of pathogen, and therefore it needs to break down. So this one, that's the dog manure that we've got in here. You see there? And we also do have the compost worms also in here. If I can just dig and show you. So if I should just show you quickly here in, we've got some worms there, as you can see. So there we go. There's the worms. So yeah, that's my dog manure worm farm that I've got. So these, the worm farm, the worm castings that comes from here, I don't use it on the crops that we would intake. We throw this on the plants that we don't intake, you know, all the stuff that we don't intake. All that castings goes on there, and also the worm tea. So we can make use of that worm tea to throw on the trees that we, you know, that we're not going to eat off. So that's the two worm farms that I've got here on my place.
Thank you so much, Fawaaz, Imraan. This is so incredible. There are a couple of questions, so I'm just going to go ahead and read them. The first one is, and you just alluded to this, Fawaaz, maybe you can comment on it. How do you harvest the actual tea, the worm tea?
Okay,
and
so
can you use it directly on the plants, or is it too strong?
Okay, so we do have a drainage at the bottom, and as you can see, this is the worm tea that we have from the one that we got from the dog manure. So the main thing is that you can throw the worm tea directly on your crops is not a problem. A lot of people have this of it will be too strong for the plants, but the plant will only intake what it needs. That's the most important thing. You can also dilute the worm tea, and this goes for the one if you do have any pets at home. It can go, you can dilute it with some water. So when you have a 5 liter, you can up it to a 10 liter. You can make it as much as possible, because remember that the plants or the crops that you're growing will only intake what it needs. So you will never burn the plant.
Thank you for that. Imraan, did you have anything else you'd like to add? Otherwise, the other question that's outstanding is, you spoke about dog poop, but how about human manure?
Yeah, so you definitely can use human manure, dog manure, and there's been lots of studies. If you just do a Google, where the red wrigglers, they actually are able to break down most, if not all, of the pathogens in there. But you see, it's all about mitigating the risk. So as Fawaaz was saying, he keeps that dog manure worm farm separate from his other worm farm, because there might just be a little bit of residue that doesn't get processed. We can't really, it will cost too much to test that whole bath, so we just want to follow best practice. We will keep that separate. We use it for things that won't get in direct contact with that costing, so like your veggies, your leafy greens, and just keep that for your like your fruit trees and your herbs and those kind of things. But yeah, it's just about mitigating the risk, keeping it separate, and the longer that it actually is in the worm farm, the more you reduce the risk of any pathogens. Sorry, I missed the other question.
This just another one came up. Do we layer the dog poo some way with food waste, with dry paper or straw?
You want to go for it, Fawaaz?
Yeah, I can go for it, no problem. So yeah, basically it comes to the same thing, exactly the same. With the dog poo, the main trick is so that it mustn't smell. The moment when the worm farms start to smell, then there is definitely something wrong. So the most important thing is to layer it with some carbon right on top, just to kill the smell. It mustn't smell at all. The moment when there's a blockage, it's going to start to smell. So when it doesn't drip at the bottom, you need to check your worm farm inside and just check if there's no blockages.
Thank you so much. There are a couple of additional questions. I'm just going to put them on hold for a second. We're going to shift things around a little bit. Thanks for your patience, but Nomonde hasn't been able to tune in just yet. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Ryan Daniels, who has a couple of reflections and some questions for the presenters. Ryan, if you want to come in.
Hi, thanks, Marcela. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here joining you guys today. It's actually like I'm really amazed at how many people have joined this workshop. So I know there's an interest in this, but I didn't realize there'd be such a big interest. So that's always very encouraging. So it's really great to meet Imraan and Fawaaz, and it's great to see that there's guys doing these kinds of things as well. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only man doing these tasks. Interested in vermiculture and composting. I mean, at least from a city kind of like a city guy kind of perspective. I mean, so everything that was said was really, really interesting. I've never done vermiculture with the bathtub before, so that's something new for me, as well as doing vermiculture with the worm poo. The dog poo. I had a couple of questions about that because it's new for me. Like, how do you deal with the drainage in the bathtub? Do you put stones at the bottom, or do you have like a pallet or something? How do you stop the drain from getting clogged? I think this one's more for Fawaaz. Fawaaz, I think you're still muted.
Okay, sorry, there we go. Like I said, I'm still new at the Zoom, so please be patient with me. So basically, yeah, the best is to put like some stones there, like a filtration system right at the bottom, just to make sure that there's no blockages. That is what I did, and just maybe a piece of mess with a piece of brick, just one brick there, just to make sure that you're not going to get any blockages. The main trick of the worm there mustn't be any blockages. just like I said, the moment when we get not something right inside there, then for sure there is a blockage.
Okay, cool.
Can I also add? Sorry.
No, go for it. Go for it.
The other thing as well is just to, make sure that you balance it with enough carbon material. So like the shredded newspaper, things that's going to kind of fluff it up and give it some aeration. Yeah, that will assist. Otherwise, if it's mainly just the feces, worm casting compacts quite easily. So just, add a balance of the carbon material.
Okay. And then while we're talking about the aerating, so with my worm farm, because I had like 2 iterations. The first one I set up like in 2010, and I had no idea what I was doing. So needless to say, the first thing that happened was the bottom got blocked, and then there was a lot of water. So what I ended up doing is I had to like routinely mix the compost, and I that kind of got rid of some of the water, got rid of the drainage, and gave some air to the worms. But if the drainage was working, would it be necessary to give it a bit of a mix every now and then, or do you think that's unnecessary?
Good question. Would you need to give it a bit of a mix? So I'm just put my video on. I don't know. I don't think so. Like the drainage, I don't think so. I don't think you'd need to. But it's not an exact science. It's more of an art. Like if you finding compacted spots in your system, then it would be ideal. But I know the worms also burrow through, and they kind of create gaps in aeration to some degree. But if your drainage is good, you shouldn't have a problem. And the biggest challenge with the drainage is that it leads to anaerobic conditions, so greater chance of pathogens in that forming. So yeah, like I don't think it would be a problem.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Ryan.
No, sorry, I've got like a ton of questions, but I'll try to like thin it out a bit. The other one that I wanted to kind of find out is like with the dog manure, because that's that was something that I'd never heard of before, and it sounds like a fantastic idea. But like, do you have to put your dog on a special diet in order to harvest the poop, or can the dog eat dog food and meat and all the kind of the usual junk food that dogs eat, or is your dog like a vegetarian?
That one for Fawaaz?
Yeah, well, yeah, I suppose mostly for Fawaaz.
Is it there? Okay. Maybe I'll comment while maybe he's starting to connect. Well, look, it's helpful, whatever you put in is what you're going to get out. So if you're going to be using a lot of processed foods in their diet, that's going to come, those synthetic chemicals are going to come into your system. And, like synthetic chemicals, I've seen studies showing that, a lot of them can be broken down by microorganisms. But it's quite complex, and, there's a time factor. So in the ideal scenario, like best practice, you want to have them on a really good diet. But what I always say is that, let's rather process these synthetic things rather than not process them. And the best to do it on site. If you consume it, if you purchasing those things, then I always say, like, why not process it on your own site?
Okay, I mean, so like as Fawaaz was saying that the dog manure worm castings doesn't get used for anything that they would then harvest and eat. So I mean, yeah, I suppose that's the first step to making sure that there isn't like a disease risk or someone getting sick. I was also just curious about the welfare of the worms, just for the sake of keeping the colony going. Like that's why I was asking about the dog's diet. Like, is there such a thing as like too much meat? Over and above, worrying about flies and ants and all that kind of stuff, but more just like also for the worms. Like, could you give them too much meat that it kills them?
I think I saw Fawaaz join in. Just check if he's there. Are you there, Fawaaz? Okay, I'll take it then if it's not there. Sorry, I'm just putting my video on off full bandwidth. It's a bit choppy when it's on. Look, I'd say too much of something, of anything, could be, is bad for any system. though in my experience, I've seen like the worms love the feces, like I've installed it for quite a lot of clients, and it's always been positive feedback, and without any changes to the diet or anything like that. I've seen them actually, they go quite crazy for feces, but this is anecdotal. This isn't a solid science. So I don't want to say that it will affect him or won't affect him, but yeah, it's what I've seen is that it is quite, they are able to handle quite a lot of standard, so to say, dog feces.
Thank you. I'm going to come in here, right? And Fawaaz, did you want to add anything else?
Okay. Okay, sorry, I had a problem with my network, but I see that I'm back on. Yeah, no, basically, so what I was saying is just the blockage, the drainage about the worm farm. So that is the most important. You just need to make sure that there's no blockages in the worm farm, even for the dog when you're over the.
It sounds like the connection isn't great still, but what I'd like to do now is shift to one of our respondents. We're very excited to have somebody from Johannesburg join us today, who's actually set up a whole business around this concept. Himkaar Singh, if you want to come in and raise some questions, but also share about your project in Joburg, that'd be great.
Hi, Marcela. Thanks so much. Yes, I actually feel the same as Ryan. I feel like, okay, other people are doing this. I'm not so crazy after all. So we have a business, we collect food waste from households, and then we recycle it into vermicompost, and we give the vermicompost back to customers at the end of the month. And customers pay 190 Rand per month for that service. So we turned composting into a business in a slightly different way. In your experience, what have been the business opportunities? Have people been wanting to buy vermicompost from you, or worm systems, or worms? What opportunities can you give all the other viewers? What do you think they could capitalize on?
Is that one for me?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, definitely castings. People ask me left, right, and center for worm castings. They ask for worm tea. They want worm farm systems. So the economic opportunities are quite large. But my focus has been always teaching people how to fish. So I prefer to train them on setting up systems themselves and doing context appropriate systems, because not everyone can do a bath, not everyone can do the bucket system or a tiered system. Some people want large scale systems, like massive, lots of cells worth of worm farms. So yeah, the opportunities are enormous. Even just like the sale of the worms themselves, like they double their population in roughly 60 days. So you can start with a handful. One of those baths, I started with a handful, and literally like in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months time, that bath is full. And it's all just adding, your inputs is literally just organic matter. And every human produces organic matter waste every single day. So your input costs are minimal. So yeah, the opportunities are enormous.
And we've started, I think all of us started a bit small, and we are seeing scalability options. What options are you considering at the moment to scale, if you think that is a route to go?
So that's not my focus area per se. Like I personally focus on the individual household and the individual, and just getting small context appropriate solutions for them. Though like one of the largest worm farming consultancies or consultant projects that I did was a farm out in Philippi, and they were processing a lot of chicken manure, and it was about 100 square meters worth of worm farm systems. Yeah, like what I have seen is that there's a lot of, I'm happy to hear about you and your business. A lot of people that are like, the market starting to develop, the industry starting to develop from my experience.
Could
Awesome.
I,
Thanks
could
so
I
much.
also just jump in? Sorry, could I just, while we're talking about logistics, so we're all talking about the worms and the worm system itself, but like one of the things that I had as an issue when I was living with other people, initially when I started out worm farming, is how do you like, what would you say is a good effective system for, like having in the kitchen to separate the vegetable waste from everything else? Have you guys picked up any tricks? Because for instance, what I had was a smaller container that would collect all the veggie waste and then have a separate bin with the bin liner. So sort of like as you separate the two different types of waste, then it makes it easier to have a bin with the cardboard and paper because it doesn't stink, it doesn't rot so quickly, and then the veggie waste can go out on a daily basis. Have you guys got something else going on, or is there something special that you guys have picked up on as well?
I'm gonna see if Fawaaz gonna take that one since I picked the last one, and I'll jump in afterwards. Are you there, Fawaaz? No? Okay, I'll go for it. So yeah, it's helpful, especially like in the dense urban cities, and if you've got many different individuals in your household, maybe you live in like a commune or something like that. Management is absolutely key, and this brings in the social aspect. So signage is so important, informing each other on best practice. But yeah, like a bucket system works great. That's what I was using in the past. I would collect all of the organic waste that can go into the worm farm, like the veg scraps and those kind of things. Collect that in a separate bucket, all the other things in another bucket that I would bokashi. So airtight container that I'd add a bit of, or I'd inoculate with some effective microorganisms, and they help to break down that material. And actually, once that material was fermented for about a month to 2 months, I would actually add that material into the worm farm. So that was like meat products, bones, all those kind of things. And I found that actually worked really well in that once it was fermented in there, it no longer attracted pests as it would if I had to just add it straight into the worm farm. But yeah, also I had chickens at my system. So I tried that for a while and then actually wanted to make better use of the organic matter, so make it do much more work before it leaves my system. So all fresh organic waste goes to the chickens first, and then the manure was going into the worm farm. But yeah, the combination of bokashi or a digesting kind of system, an anaerobic system, and then a separate fresh organic waste. I think that worked really well for me.
Ryan, did you have any other questions or comments?
No, I think that's good for me for now. Or actually, maybe just one comment. So like, I think I've seen a lot of worm farm designs. So like you can get the really expensive ones in stores where everything is sort of pre-assembled, or you can do the DIY ones. What I haven't seen is something that actually looks nice. So do you guys have any tricks or tips for making worm farms look pretty like interesting or cool, or is that something that people don't usually complain about?
Yeah, in my experience, maybe it's the market that I deal with, but cost is often the biggest thing. So I often get complaints that those nice fancy looking ones are just way too expensive. But yeah, like corporate clients. I know Cavendish Square in Cape Town, Claremont. They've got a commercial worm farming set up in the basement. I haven't seen it yet, but it looks like a slick system, and I'm sure it would have to be in that setting. But yeah, to make it look nice, I think just like the ones that I've seen people go for, that's kind of a middle ground, is like a bucket system or those tote boxes, those plastic boxes, because they can look quite neat. They're stackable. And yeah, I haven't heard no one's complained to me about aesthetics of the mirror. I mean, I've seen and worked with systems where we actually just inoculate compost heaps with worms, and that's enough for people. We don't turn the compost heap, it's a cold pile, but the worms are doing the thing in there. But yeah, for some people, aesthetics is important, I would say, and especially like the densely populated urban areas, complexes, flats, and those kind of things. I do think it would be important.
Cool, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. I would love, Himkaar, for you to tell us a little bit about what's going on in Joburg, just because you are, such a leader in the space, and without getting into great detail, if you want to share from your experience so far, how your business is going on that side.
Yeah, sure.
And then we'll
Actually,
open it up to everybody. Go ahead.
sure. I'd like to share one highlight actually, which is since COVID, since March, actually April 2020, our business has been growing quite fast. And I think you should note that because that's a great opportunity. It means that the time is ripe. It's people are spending more time at home. They are realizing how much food waste they're producing, and they're wanting to do something about it. And they're also spending a lot more time in the garden, so they're wanting to get vermicompost and other gardening supplies to do gardening. So I think if you're sitting on an idea, or you've already started trials or something, I think it's really the right time to start a business. And you can start small. You don't have to do anything big. Just sell your first bag of compost and see how it goes. That's actually how we started. We started with just a handful of worms, and then it just grew into what we have now. And also, if you want to share any ideas or discuss any ideas or analyze any ideas, get in contact with the team. You can contact us through Marcela, because I found that in this industry, there's so much collaboration. You can't really be a bad guy in compost. If you just do it because you love it. So collaborate and get in contact.
Thank you so much. I've just posted the website for the Compost Kitchen. That's Himkaar's business. And I've also posted a hashtag. And for those who joined a little bit late, this is International Compost Awareness Week. So as you guys were kind of sharing your experiences, this idea of taking photos and sharing with the world, what's happening in this part of the globe, that would be fantastic. So for those of you who are active on social media, do consider using the hashtag. So this is sort of the end of the formal kind of introductions or interventions. I'd like to open it up for questions, comments, suggestions. Please feel free to raise your hand or just unmute yourself if you're happy to do that. Any comments or questions from the room? Shabat, did you have a question? Would you like to come in?
Yes, hi there. I'm in Cape Town, down in Noordhoek. And we are teaching permaculture as well in a group of friends. And what I'd like to know is, can we have a WhatsApp group or something connected to this teaching? I think it is absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for doing it. And we would like to connect with people who can sell us vermicompost, because at this point in time, we don't have enough people producing enough for us to grow food. And that's what we're setting up to do, big scale permaculture food growing.
Thank you so much. There is a group, and Erica, I don't know if you are able to put the link to the group in the chat box, because a lot of these issues are being discussed there. But also, Chabat, if you want to include your email address or a way of contacting you in case somebody in this group wants to make contact with you directly, that would also be very helpful.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Yeah. Was that somebody wanting to ask a question? I don't know if we covered all the questions that were raised earlier. So if I missed any, please come in if you feel that your question hasn't been answered yet.
Hi, Marcela, it's Kelson here. Can I come in?
Please, go ahead.
Yes, thanks so much. It's amazing afternoon. It's really cool to hear that's what's going on out there, just a question. If we're here in Scarborough, and one of our projects is to try to empowering peoples, and we've been collecting organic waste from residents for a while now, and we did turn a lot of waste into really good compost, and lately we've been empowering someone to to start his own little business and collect the organic waste into people that feel that it's much easier just to be collect home, don't have to drop at all drop off area. And I'll love to hear more or put in touch with the guys from Johannesburg, Bob, so that they can be in touch and they can change some ideas. I think it's really, really cool, to see this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelson. Ryan, did you want to come in?
I'm actually, I've got a question, but I just need to think about how I'm going to phrase it. If you could give me like a minute more.
Sure, no problem. Anybody else with comments or questions?
Hey, Marcela, I've got a question.
Go for it.
How to get the worm castings out of your system without losing too many worms?
Imraan, maybe that's a question for you.
Okay, cool. I'll take it. Sorry, I'm just going back outside to show you. Okay, so because the worms are photophobic, especially like in a layered system like this, a tiered system like this, can you guys see? So what I would do is, you'll see there's one stack over here, and there's another stack over here, and a third stack over here. So once this one is full, you literally just open it up to the light in the daytime. The worms will migrate down into the next layer, and then you can harvest all the castings in here. It's simple as that. Same thing like within Fawaaz's worm farm or the bathtub. You literally just open up one side to light, and then they'll move to the other side away from the light, and then you can harvest that section that's got castings and no worms in it.
Thank you, Imraan.
So
Eric, has that? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Ryan.
Marcela, can I jump in now quickly while we're talking about harvesting the worms as well? So when I had my worm farm, maybe this is a bit of an unnecessary complication I was doing, but I was also trying to sort of have it be both a worm farm and a garden, because I didn't want, because I was living in a city and I didn't have like much of a backyard, and I wasn't growing vegetables, so there's no, I had no use for the castings. So in the end, what I was trying to do is have plants growing while the worms were eating. So like having plants growing out of the compost. And well, it didn't really work too well, because when I put mint in, then the mint grew too fast and it sort of dried up the compost too quickly. And if I put other things in, they got moldy and they died. Have you guys tried to do anything like that? Like it's sort of an integrated system, or do you think that's not a good idea?
Sorry, I'm just a bit unclear. Garden and worm farm system. Do you mean the worm farm in the garden directly?
So actually, it was because I was staying in Claremont and in a shared house, so there wasn't much of a garden. So we had the tub system, the stacked tubs, and what I did was I had mint growing out. So as you know, when you stack the tubs, there's a little bit of space in between one tub and the other. So I had mint growing out of there, but the roots were in the compost, in the worm casts that's still in the tub.
Okay, yeah, no. So I personally wouldn't grow it directly in the worm castings, because it's so strong and so full of nutrients, and I'm assuming that's also why a lot of your plants went moldy. So I'll normally mix this. I'll add only as much as 20% worm castings to a good sifted compost, and then plant plants in there. But yeah, it's quite potent, quite powerful. So I wouldn't plant directly in just worm castings. In terms of an integrated system in the garden, just to go on a tangent, what I have seen and have done before is where you actually place, if you've got space, if you've got a garden, you place your worm farm directly in the soil, like a bucket filled with holes, or like a PVC pipe, waste pipe filled with holes, and you put your worms in there. That way the leachate or the worm tea naturally just disperses into the soil. But yeah, personally, I wouldn't grow directly in just worm castings.
Okay, that's something I didn't think too much about, is that it might be too strong for the plants. And then while we're at it, so as part of the aesthetic thing that I mentioned earlier, it was a bad way of phrasing the question, but what I was What I was thinking is that when I did my one, I was also, I mean, it's part of the reason why I added the plants. I was trying to make it look less like a big tub. Okay, maybe it's not a question, maybe it's just a statement. Like that's part of the reason why I set the whole thing up, is I was trying to make it look really pretty, and then I didn't want to have a separate plant. I didn't want to have pot plants on top of the worm container. I wanted to look like it was a very impressive and functional kind of garden ornament, if you will. I think there's like a lot of space in maybe the business environment for you guys to kind of, if you can think of a clever way to make it look, like a really pretty garden ornament rather than a big plastic tub. I think there'll be a lot of people interested in that.
Yeah, and what we have done for clients that want like aesthetically pleasing worm farms, they just put a housing over it, like a wooden housing or something like that, just so that it's not looking, as you say, at a plastic tub in the garden. But yeah, there's definitely opportunity for that.
Imraan, I have a question, and if it's not for you, maybe somebody in this group. Do we have a sense, like, how many people are doing this in Cape Town, or sort of, have you seen any type of pattern, a little bit like what Himkaar was explaining to us, that since lockdown, his business sort of increased? Do you have a sense of how this has developed in Cape Town in the past few years?
I stand on the prediction, but I don't know if I saw a while ago, one of our universities did do a study, but I stand on the prediction as to, what is the market like at the moment, who's using it. In my personal experience, I have seen adoption shoot through the roof, especially since COVID, as well when cannabis became decriminalized. There's been, from the cannabis growers, there's a lot of interest in worm farming. Yeah, definitely demand and interest in this has shot through the roof, and my assumption is that it will continue to do so because it makes sense and the need is growing. People are gardening more, people have more time to do so, people are not just more time, but realizing how critical and necessary it is. So anytime you want to grow food, after you grow food and you maybe start with buying some compost, whatever, soon realize that it costs a lot to keep it going. You'll be constantly going to buy in compost, and makes feasible, practical sense to just produce your own fertility when you are producing the waste to do so every single day.
Thank you. Thanks for that. It'll be interesting to look into this as we kind of grow this group. Are there any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I think I'm going to hand it over to, yeah, who's that? Please come in.
Yeah, that's me, Fawaaz. I just got one thing regarding the worm farm. I think the best place to put your worm farm would be in the shade on a cool place. That would be a perfect idea to put your worm farm for the future. For those guys who are starting with your worm farm, I think it would be a good idea to put it in a shady place.
Thank you for that. I think with this, Eric, I'm going to hand it over to you if you want to share a little bit about what's happening for the rest of the week, or if Melanie, if you want to come in, please do so. Is Erica or Melanie still online? Okay, so I'm posting the schedule for the week. So because it is Compost Awareness Week, there are 2 more online sessions, one on Wednesday and one on Thursday. I will just now include the links in the chat box so that it's easy for you guys to sign up, to register, and to join those conversations as well. Just, Eric, I'm trying you one more time in case you can hear me now. Not sure if we lost Erica. Okay, are there any final thoughts or comments? We are actually wrapping up earlier than expected, which is not a problem, but just giving you guys an opportunity to raise any other questions or comments you might have. Okay, I'm not hearing any feedback, which is fine. But just checking. I mean, there is a question. Dana, would you like to raise your question?
Sure. I was wondering just if anyone has any experience using biochar with their compost just in really hardened soil or rough terrains.
I don't mind taking that one. So yeah, I love biochar. I came across it in 2014. And in the compost, especially in the worm farms as well. So because it's high carbon, it's almost pure carbon, it adds that function to your mix. And the worms love it because of the properties of the biochar in attracting or holding on to a lot of the nitrogen that, some of it does get released in the decomposition process. So biochar does a lot to hold as much of it as possible in your organic matter and making it more available then to the worms and the rest of the system to make use of. And I'm assuming I stand on the prediction, but because of the its property of aerating the mix as well, I've seen it improve the system as well. And then just as well for odors, again, because it's high carbon, it's very good at holding those odors in your system. And in the soil, I work a lot on the Cape Flat sandy soil, and it's one of the first and best things that we use when we start new gardens and regenerate the land. Biochar, absolutely incredible.
Great, thank you. Where are you sourcing your biochar just locally? Yeah.
We produce it ourselves, but when we do have large projects, there's a company called Amcor Products. They're in Philippi, and then there was also Guerrero. They were out in, I think, Hermanus, but they were delivered to Cape Town side. And I have seen a couple of other players in the industry as well. But most of the time, because a majority of our clients are small scale urban residential, we'd either produce it ourselves or purchase from Amcor in Philippi.
Thank you. And have you ever inoculated your biochar before putting it into the soil with like your worm juice or anything like that?
Yes, no, we always do. We don't apply the biochar direct because it's so high in carbon. If you just add it straight, it's first going to pull those nutrients from the surrounding soil and saturate itself. And that could have a detrimental effect on the vegetation of the garden. So we always charge it either in a worm farm or compost heap, or we soak it in a liquid fertilizer, or put it through an animal system first.
Great, thank you.
Himkaar, do you want to come in with your question?
Sure, it's just a quick one. I was wondering if anyone here has ever tried vermicomposting with spent mushroom substrate. That's what they use to grow the mushroom, right? And then they usually have to take it away from the facility so that it doesn't contaminate the next crop. But it could also, it's usually can be used in thermophilic composting. But has anyone tried it in vermicomposting?
Anyone else? Okay, I'll take it. Yeah, one of my first explorations when I got into this field was in mushroom production. And so we produce a lot of spent mushroom waste, and we use a lot of it in the worm farm as well. And it broke down as easily as the rest of the organic matter. And from what I understand is that, as the fungus decomposes, it actually attracts the next part of the ecosystem's process, so as it decomposes, it attracts certain beneficial bacteria and protozoa and other types of fungi. And so that it kickstarts that cycle of decomposition. So anecdotal again, not hard science, but in my experience, I did see a notable increase in the decomposition in the worm farm.
Thank you, Imraan. Are there any other thoughts or feedback on this particular point?
I have one. Yeah, I have two questions. One is with the biochar, once you inoculate it in your juice, does it break down, or is it still pretty sturdy to put into, let's say, the beach stand or the rougher terrains, that it kind of gives more of a skeleton under the soil then for other worms to flourish. And then the second question was around the mushrooms and the dog poo. And just whether one has done any testing to see whether it's if one combines it, whether it extracts any of the toxins or antibiotics or heavy metals that might be sitting in there.
Okay, so sorry, just remind me of the first question again. Does it break down if you charge with liquid fertilizer?
Yeah, I'm just imagining if you're putting some biochar that hopefully is, a strong skeleton that can help, put some frame into the soil. If when you put it in your juice to kind of inoculate it, does it break it down that it doesn't kind of give that backbone for the microbes and worms in the actual sand or soil to function in?
Okay, so to answer the first part of that, it doesn't, disintegrate or break down into smaller particles when you are soaking it with liquid fertilizer. Though my understanding is that the finer the biochar, the better actually in the soil, because it's got then more surface area. And as far as I understand, the more advantageous property of the biochar is not just the pores or the space, between each of the pieces of the biochar, but it's actually the what they call adsorption. So it's kind of like an electrostatic property of the biochar. So more surface area increases that property, and so it improves the biochar's ability to hold onto water, to hold onto nutrients. In technical terms, it's called, it increases the cation exchange capacity. So the ability to hold onto those things. So yeah, it's not an expert on biochar, but as far as I understand, the finer it is, the better actually in the soil. And then the second question was combining that, or is there any studies combining that with mushrooms? And I haven't seen the combination of the two, but I have seen mushrooms on its own. I don't know if you know, Paul Stamets is a world-renowned mycologist, and he's got some published studies on using mushrooms. Another one was using oyster mushrooms to pull out or bioremediate heavy metals and synthetic chemicals from compost. Also doing water bioremediation, so having mushroom sacs and water bodies to clean up the pollutants in soil. So yeah, I haven't personally seen the connection between the two though, but I know biochar are really good at filtration. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We still have a couple of minutes if people have additional questions or comments. I just for now wanted to say that we have recorded the session. It's going to be posted on the Food Growers YouTube channel. And I'll probably just follow up with a link to all of you via email later today. And also to make an invitation to all of you, if you have suggestions for follow-up sessions, to please get in touch. The idea is to grow this community and also to continue to share experiences and knowledge. Are there any other thoughts before we bring today's session to a close? Doesn't sound like it. I would just like to thank our panelists or respondents. It was really a very insightful session. Unlike what you might believe, there are also women involved in this, and we had Nomonde Buthelezi, who was going to share her experience today. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to join us, but hopefully for a future occasion. Again, thanks everybody, and tune in on Wednesday and on Thursday. The links have been posted and they will be emailed to you as well.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Marcela. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, everyone, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.